What's up, y'all? My name is T. Shaw, and this is Brewin Black Podcast, where the contents we serve you is authentic, vulnerable, and relatable. That means we serve you with no cream and no sugar.
I guess I like my coffee black.
Yo, 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 this is Scholar P, pronouns he, him, his.
And it's your boy T Shaw, pronouns he, him, his.
And this is Brewin Black, giving you all the latest in Black news and entertainment for our intellectuals, our millennials, and those who like their information like we like our news. Black. Yo, T Shaw, how you doing today, brother?
Bro, it's been a good day. It's been a good week. My girl out overseas enjoying her best life. So shout out to her. Shout out to Noma. It is her birthday. It's her birthday little shindig. So, girls trip. Shout out to them. So I kind of miss her, but I got my boy Deuce. We chilling in the crib. But yeah, no, I think it's actually been super fulfilling. One of my best friends is actually moving out to LA. He got a job where I work at. I just feel honored that I was able to plug him with the opportunity because he had so many like misfortunes. It's like, when stuff just continues to go wrong and like things don't seem to be working for you, it's nice to be able to like really support somebody in getting out of that. And it just kind of shows me that like, as long as you keep fighting, as long as you keep on your grind, like you will, like that hard work will pay off.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, yeah, man. Well, first of all, it's great that that your boy has friends like you in his life. And then secondly, I think that in terms of the whole baby being gone, the absence makes the heart grow fonder.
On me.
And last but not least, yeah, shout out to Noma Cancer Gang. It's the
Yeah.
first day of July as we're recording this right now. The best month of the year, the only month where almost everybody who's in school is in their summertime. Because back in June, we weren't all off, and in August, we won't all be off. But all of July is that dead center, the heat, the pounding heart of the years. And as you all probably can guess, my birthday's in July, so we are planning that as we speak. We are going bananas, players, pools, and parties is going down, is going down. And I'm so very excited. But the week has been good for me too, man. I look, June was crazy. I was sort of on sicko mode in June, but I'm trying to put the scumbag days behind me. So we shall see how that goes. It is a work in progress, fellas. Treat yourself better. Treat the women in your life better. I swear to God, because all the chickens come home to roost. I'll tell you that much right now from where I'm sitting. Okay.
Hey. So since July is your birthday month, is it gonna be calmer? Is it really gonna be calmer than June?
I have a few trips planned, so I don't calmer. I don't know, but do I want to have a higher moral and ethical code of conduct for myself? Absolutely.
I,
I don't.
I feel that.
So we're gonna see how that goes. I'm gonna sort of be keeping y'all updated. I can't let y'all know all my business in real life because these are real people involved. But shout out to anyone who has endured my sicko mode this June. My apologies. And if you have smoke for me, I understand why I have to be close to the chimney at this particular point in my life. But that said, T. Shaw, hit him with the land acknowledgments, brother. You know how we get down.
Absolutely. So we gotta acknowledge the land that we're on in the same place, that land of the Gabrielino and the Tongva. This is stolen land, this is colonized land, and we will always, always, always pay those respects.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, right now we want to get into our quicks before we start the show for real, for real. One of the first things that we want to talk about are just the BET Awards. Shout out to all the performers. Shout out for Black Twitter acting up. Whether it was Meg, taking the award for Cardi and not saying her name at first, or Saweetie and Jack Harlow, allegedly, flirting with each other, but Jack Harlow's like, nah, that's on some friend stuff. Who knows what's going on there? We had Taraji P. Henson,
Uh-huh.
allegedly shooting her shot with Method Man, who everyone's thirsting over anyway. Shout out to Method Man, and Taraji. So there were just a bunch of great moments at the awards. But one of the coolest things too that I saw happen on the red carpet when Lil Kim said she wanted a versus with Nicki very much, and that would be super interesting. I don't even know if that's really fair. It's sort of like a Usher with Chris Brown thing. It's just like without one, the other can't exist. And
Yes,
so
absolutely.
no matter how far Nicki Minaj or Chris Brown has gotten, like they don't exist without these other people. So it's a weird thing to me, but that would be fun. Even though I feel like Nicki has like a mountain of hits, but Little Kim ain't no scrub. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, oh, absolutely. She paved the way. She paved the
Right,
way. I think for Nikki to be this great, it had to be a Lil Kim, and that's just what you're getting at. But yeah, I don't know if it's competition. That might be controversial, but also I'm a 90s baby, but I'm a younger 90s baby,
right.
96. You feel me? I feel like people born in like 92, 90, they might feel different. I just know that I'm putting Nikki in my top 5 lyricists. Like
Right.
like her punchlines, her delivery, like is phenomenal. And I don't know if Lil Kim had that. She had the sauce. She definitely gave Nicki her image in a way, or helped kind of like set the way for Nicki to come up with that image. But like on the mic, man, I don't know too many people touching Nicki, men or women.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's tough. It's tough when we go hit for mainstream hit. I think
Mhm.
but with Lil Kim, I think that she has. I don't, I don't think sexualized rapping hitting the mainstream for women heavy happens without a Little Kim, or even
Yeah,
without a Salt and Pepper. You know what I'm saying?
absolutely, absolutely.
Like they're even if they didn't reach that main, and we also got to take into consideration Little Kim not growing up in the social media age that Nicki did,
Mhm.
right? And not having that to propel her career in the same ways that Nicki did. But like, yeah, in terms of delivery, the flow, the creativity, this whole Black Barbie notion, like Nicki's a goat in her own right. And
Mhm.
here at Brewin Black, we're not going to get into this thing of pitting Black women against each other because there is enough room for Little Kim to be a legend and for Nicki to be a young legend. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So we just got to salute to that. If that does happen, though, we will definitely be watching with
One day.
our popcorn. And shout out to Versus once again, just one more time. As we speak right now, Bobby Brown and Keith Sweat are going at it.
Mhm.
That's going to be a crazy bout for sure.
Absolutely. And then I just want to give a shout out to Jasmine Sullivan for winning Album of the Year.
Hey,
Hotels, a phenomenal project. I do want to acknowledge the snub of Chloe and Haley or Halle to Silk Sonic. Don't get me wrong, that the song it bops, but it's like, how does one song qualify you as like a group? And then how does that beat a whole like album, deluxe album, visual album type thing? So yeah, I get that's really one of my biggest critiques. And then I actually have a question for you, Scholar P. What
yeah.
do you think that BET needs to do for people to kind of take their awards show a little bit more serious? Because I think there's a lot of people that's like, it's the BET Awards. Like, do you know, would there be anything that could really change that
Um,
how we look at BET and their
well,
award?
I think I think BT programming wise, I think I have more critique about BT because I think BT is not known for necessarily having the hot shows anymore. I think
Mm,
now people look to like the HBOs, the stars, and the more white dominated networks. Even though BT is you have black front facing programming, but it's owned by white folks as well. But I think with the award shows, the difficulty there is that the award shows that are big and have merit are already sort of stationed in the universe, right? So the
mm,
Oscars, the Grammys, all those types of things, the Academy Awards, those are already cemented as the ones that have the most merit. And so when we think about how BT can improve its award shows, I think that making the award shows as seamless and outstanding as possible is a step. But I also think that there's also a ceiling, because until I
Mhm.
think in order for BET Awards to have really more merit, it has nothing to do with what the Black people at BET can do. It's about the Oscars, the Academy Awards, looking at someone who's won 20 NAACP Image Awards or 20 BET Awards and treating that with the same type of merit and respect as someone who's won 5 or 6 Oscars or
Mhm.
10 Grammys, or and so on and so forth. So I think it's an industry problem that needs to change.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's like a prestige thing. I didn't think about it like that, but I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah. What about you, T. Shaw?
Bro, I was genuinely posing the question. I was really sitting here because I was sitting there thinking, like, especially on Twitter, people like, I ain't finna watch this, the BET Awards. Or like, this why nobody take the BET Awards serious when they're looking at like why Chloe and Halle lost, right? Or how sometimes people don't even show up to accept the awards. And they were even talking about like some of the women rap artists, like in the category. People felt like the reason that like Coily Ray was in there and like not Flo Millie and not somebody else kind of showed that they're just kind of like they're just with like this pop culture stuff. They're just kind of with TikTok. They're not really like there's no real um I don't know, like they're not really looking for real artists. So yeah, it was just like I'm kind of thinking like, is there anything they could do? But I think you do have a point. It's like when you think about the prestige of those Academy Awards, like, and maybe that's what like anti-blackness looks like in a way, because it is like just a black facing like awards show. Like it just doesn't mean as much because they're not playing against the whole field. But I'm not exactly sure.
Well, no, and I like that point that you made about because I think that a lot of times what the big award shows do get a lot of flack for is not being in tune with the culture, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that if BT shows that their awards aren't based on who was the sexiest, who was the lightest skinnedness, right? Who had the lightest skin, who was the most poppin', but not who shifted the culture, then BT that it could be taken more seriously, because people
Mm-hmm.
would feel like, oh well, BT might not be as big in the white world as the Academy Awards or other award shows, but we know that at least when the culture supports something, or when the culture says this is the best artist, this is the best song, this is the best collaboration, the BT listened and heard and
Mm-hmm.
acknowledged that. And so I think you make a great point. BT first and foremost has to have its pulse, its hand on the pulse of the culture, and actually has to say, we listened to y'all. It was obvious that for example, SZA should have won 20 Grammys when Control came out. So if she don't get them nowhere else, she gonna get them here with us. So, and I think that if BT does that, at least Black people will show up and show out for them, because we just want to be heard.
Yeah, that's a bar.
So that I mean that's what that is. But you know what? Shout out to BT, the BT Awards, all the hard work that went into it, and we trust that y'all are going to keep coming with us. And shout out to Black Twitter for giving us more comedy moments. You know what I mean? Uh,
Absolutely.
but with that being said, we want to take it into something called our light
Roast.
roast.
Uh,
So for those of you who don't know, our light roast is when we critique someone or something in society, and sometimes we try to do it with love and constructive criticism. But some of y'all don't get no love, and so this this week, or within these past few days, something happened with our not our favorite person per se, but this lady named Caitlyn Jenner. Y'all might have heard of her. And she was talking about if she gets elected to be governor, that she's going to do everything in her power to stop the critical race theory from being taught. In so many words, and we sort of want to dissect that today, because we know that a lot of times people are thinking about critical race theory and they don't necessarily understand what it means, but now it's becoming more of a buzzword, and we want to
yeah.
sort of get into the history of it. And so, T, I know you've been talking to some people about it, and I'll go on my little spiel later, but tell us more about critical race theory. I am a random person, right? Whether I be Black, white, Latinx, indigenous, Asian, like I don't really know about critical race theory.
Mhm.
What is that? Because that sounds complicated in and of itself already.
Absolutely. So, just like you said, critical race theory has been kind of used as a buzzword, right? It's kind of been put in the place of like social justice or any type of like progressive sounding thing in the classroom. That they've been using that anytime race talk comes up, they're calling it critical race theory. So yeah, I think it's super important that we define what it means. So critical race theory has been around for a while, over 40 years, and that's due to Derek Bell. Shout out to Derek Bell from Harvard. But
Hey,
I think the core idea of CRT, critical race theory, is that like race is a social construct, and that racism is not just a product of like prejudice and discrimination, but it is also embedded into like our legal system and policies. So everything that you've heard from Brewin Black at this point, it has been rooted in critical race theory. We think about the Constitution, we think about how things are embedded in the system. That is critical race theory. And I really love like the part about critical race theory that I really love is that there's an idea of storytelling and counter storytelling. Like there's a way that we think about race already, and with like this counter storytelling, it allows us to kind of like push back against like what is already understood about like race in America. um but yeah, I want to say that like it is also like a theory that racism is part of our everyday. It is a theory that like you don't have to be like overtly racist, but like your moves and the things that you do throughout the day can be fueled by things of racism. But I think conservatives have gotten very like comfortable calling critical race theory just reverse racism. They think that we're just discriminating against white people, and that we're looking to harm young white kids' self-image. But again, I think it's just being conflated with anything related to social justice in the classroom, and I think that that is one of our biggest losses. Because if we can't talk about like history as we should, like how we were talking about Juneteenth last week, then we will never be able to really go too far. So, what do you think?
yeah, no, absolutely. And so also shout out to folks like Kimberly Crenshaw, who was actually Derek Bell's student,
Yeah.
because critical race theory was sort of an offshoot of critical legal studies, because
Mhm.
Derek Bell was teaching critical legal studies at Harvard Law School. And then people like Thomas Delgado, Kimberly Crenshaw, and others, they brought race scholars together and sort of created all of these tenets around critical race theory. And so when we think about critical race theory, for those of you who might think that it is reverse racism, it's not. What it is it's just what T. Shaw said. It's this consideration that race is embodied in every aspect of life, and then it's sort of teasing out the ways in which race is embedded in everyday pieces of life, right? And so when we think about critical race theory, it's sort of a dive into our society and a look into how everything has a race component involved. I remember being in undergrad, and I was with an African American studies and history major, and people were asking him like, what, like, how do people sort of, or what do you have you gained from being in the African American studies program? And he said, you can literally look at a pen and I can tell you how it's racist. If I look at a pen, I can really tell you how it is racist. And when we think about critical race theory, it sort of it can take that pen and look at all these different aspects in the way that this little pen came to be racist, right? And so when we think about critical race theory, you want to think more so about not this is something to attack white people. It's something to really unravel what's going on in society so that people who are white, black, indigenous, Asian, Latinx
Mhm.
can think more deeply about how race constructed this thing around them versus, oh, you didn't work hard enough, oh, you're not smart enough. Like, no,
Yeah.
like there is a racial component and cultural context to everything. And that's what critical race theory is doing. Because even with critical legal studies, there was this assumption that laws were fair, laws were just, and a lot of critical legal studies was about class, like,
Mhm.
and they were looking at how like class impacts laws, and laws don't impact everyone the same way. And so critical race theory is inviting you to think about race in that way, right? So like me going to school as a poor black man is different than a poor white man going to school, which is different from a poor white woman, which is different from a poor black woman going to school, and so on and so forth. And critical race theory and its tenets allow us to explore what that means and how that looks, right?
Mhm.
And so those are some of my initial thoughts about it. There are tenets Yeah, and it changes depending on what discipline. So in education, it might be a little bit different. Sociology it might be a little bit different, but there are actual tenets that go deeper into the different aspects of how race can be embedded in everything. And so that's just a little tidbit of what critical race theory means and what it can represent and why you shouldn't be afraid of it while it's not coming at you. It's just making you consider. And to be honest, I think that when you think about critical race theory, it shouldn't make white people feel bad. It should empower white people because they'll understand whiteness more. They'll
Absolutely.
understand the act because if you there were, and we'll get into this later, but there have been people who have said, hey, look, I want to understand things like the riot that happened on January 6th, right? And critical race theory can tell you why a white person is mad and why a white person decides to destroy things around them, right?
Mhm.
And it can tell, and it also tells you why Black people, even though we're continuously being killed, why we haven't gone to the stairs of the White House of the Capitol and done the same thing those white folks did. Like it's all within critical race theory, and so that's what it employs you to do. So I really don't want people to be scared when they hear of critical race theory. I want them to be excited because once you understand critical race theory, you get to understand your neighbor, no matter what race they are, on a much deeper level, and
Absolutely.
how things that regard race impact their lives.
Absolutely. And critical race theory goes so deep. Like Scholar P just gave y'all a quick crash course of like what CRT really looks like. But I want y'all to know how complex and how deep it can go. This is again, it started as a legal study and it has branched out to other forms of academia, but it is still it can be high theory, right? So I want y'all to know when you're hearing about it and they're talking about K through 12, it is not really critical race theory that they're talking about. They're just using that as a substitute for like just social justice, talking about social justice in the classroom. And really what they're doing is they've used legislation, and I want to say Idaho is where we first talked about, right? Boise State, I think, was a proponent of getting critical race theory classes off their campus. Then it was picked up by Texas, Iowa, Oklahoma, Tennessee. But when you look into these bills, they're super, super general and they're super broad. And it is really disarming like teachers with their ability to be able to talk about like Christopher Columbus and genocide, being able to talk about like mass incarceration, being able to really talk about like Jim Crow, sharecropping, how we got to Juneteenth. So this is kind of what we're talking about when people were upset about like making Juneteenth a holiday. It's like, how can you make it a holiday if we can't accurately talk about it? Because it is literally illegal in some states. I don't know how constitutional it is, but with our Supreme Court, it might be hard to like get it like really thrown out or reversed. So I really want y'all to understand that like critical race theory is being seen as this boogeyman. And Scholar P broke down how powerful and how necessary it is. But also knowing that like even seniors in high school, it might be a lot for them. But if you're hearing people talk about, especially Caitlyn Jenner talking about like getting rid of critical race theory, just know it is really an attack on ethnic studies. It is an attack on like cultural based learning practices. So it's coming after Black and brown classrooms more than anything.
Right, absolutely, yeah, and I think that and you make a really good point because we're talking. I think one of the things that we really have to get into is this idea of this fear around critical race theory, and let's be really frank about it. It's white families being concerned that critical race theory is our teachers teaching their little white boys and girls to hate themselves.
Mhm.
And that's a white parent's fear. That's what it is. That's what Caitlyn Jenner's stuff is. That's what these governors and legislators are doing, and they're doing that. And a lot of them, to your point, they're some of them aren't necessarily afraid. Some of them just know how bad it is, and and
Mhm.
and they know that education will help change the minds and eventually the status quo, right? But for those of you who are white and you were thinking to yourself, oh my God, little Timmy and little Karen, they're going to learn about critical race theory and they're going to hate themselves and think, well, all white people are evil. That's not what critical race theory does at all. When I was learning about critical race theory, because I've actually taken a critical race theory course. Shout out to Dr. Jessica Harris and Denise Solozano. when you learn about critical race theory, I've had white people in those classes, and they didn't grow up to hate themselves. They didn't grow up they didn't hate themselves afterwards. They were way more enlightened. And what you have to understand are two points. First of all, not every white person in the world was out there doing all this crazy stuff to black people. There are actually a lot of white allies over history that have done their part, who have sacrificed their lives and X, Y, and Z to the betterment, the progress of black people and of other people of color. And so those people actually exist. And so when you get into critical race theory, right, or when you get into talking about race in general, right, there should be some knowledge and some acknowledgement of that, because this is not about teaching little white boys and girls to hate themselves. There are actually some white heroes and allies over time that have done their part, and like those are the folks that people can hold on to. However, I think another component about critical race theory is also that, like T. Shaw said, there are some folks who are trying to do things to intentionally attack black and brown spaces, because they know that if you and your white boys and girls get educated, y'all are going to look at society and be like, oh my gosh, race impacts my black classmates, my black neighbors in a completely different way. We need to change these policies. We need to change the setup of this voting district. We need to change X, Y, and Z. And that's what people are afraid of you learning. People don't want you to get enlightened, because once you get enlightened, you'll start to see, oh my gosh, I see race in this, I see race in that. And then you're going to start pushing for different things that goes against a particular agenda. And so if critical race theory is being talked about in a way that's fearful, you got to question who is saying that, and you always got to question, what do they have to gain by you being fearful of critical race theory? And that's sort of what I want to leave y'all with.
Absolutely. And it's just remembering that racism, again, is a part of everyday life. And that's based on just how this country has been built. So you can be white, you can be non-white. There's
Right.
things that you can do that you don't intend to be racist, but nevertheless, it can be fueled by like racism, right? And it doesn't make you inherently racist, but it does mean that like it plays into like a larger system of racism that is so very common in our everyday like society. So yeah, that's all I want to really leave y'all with, is that like critical race theory reminds you that like this is a part of life and you need to be conscious of it, or you will become that lion that we talked about last week.
Absolutely. It's sort of like this. If you're if you are if your child is about to go skydiving and you feel uncomfortable because some people have had accidents when they go skydiving and X, Y, and Z, right? And then your child goes and they have no idea about skydiving or what to do or how to use the equipment because of things that might happen. Then they go and they use the skydiving equipment and stuff goes wrong. They end up hurting themselves. They end up hurting somebody else. And what you got to realize for all my white families, and even for other families as well, if you don't have conversations with your children about race, if you don't allow these teachers and educators to have these conversations about race, you are literally arming them and preparing them and setting them up to hurt other people unintentionally, like T. Shaw said. And so we got to stop, y'all. Enough is enough. CRT is not a bad thing. Talking about race is not a bad thing. It's making your child a better person. I promise you, your child will not come home hating themselves. I promise you. And if anyone wants to or feels differently, come and talk to us about it, because we'll get you right. We'll have a great conversation and dialogue with you. But I think more importantly, to T. Shaw's point, when people have these conversations about race early and they have these conversations that are painful and uncomfortable, yes, it's uncomfortable in that moment, but over a longer period of time, you become a better person and you don't end up doing things that harm other people. And like we see today, if these cops, right, had gotten training around CRT, even as adults, maybe there wouldn't be so many cases of unarmed black murder, right? And because we think about someone even like a Derek Chauvin, right? He just got his sentencing, a few days ago, and it was what, 22 and a half years. And, but at the end of the day, no matter how much time he got, I think that you can't bring George Floyd back. And who knows what
Mhm.
types of conversations around CRT or just more uncomfortable conversations about race. Who knows how that would have impacted Chauvin, right? T, what are your thoughts on the actual sentencing itself?
Yeah, people texted me when it happened, and I must have been watching like TV. I probably was watching Harry Potter because I was trying to catch up on it.
Right.
But I guess like that is just to say that I don't think I was that invested in it. Knowing that he was going to be sentenced was solid because there was no penalty that was going to make me really cheer. Because again, it's like it's not bringing him back by any means. And it's not even stopping other people from doing it because we saw when George Floyd or when Derek Chauvin was found guilty for murdering George Floyd, there was a young girl killed right around that same time, like as the decision was coming out. So again, it's such a more systemic problem. So I didn't find any joy because it's hard, bro. Like I don't really believe as a prison abolitionist in theory. I don't see the real benefit of it other than knowing that we got some type of justice. 22 and a half years is solid, bro. That's a lot of time. Like, but I don't know if it's fundamentally going to change him because prison doesn't rehabilitate anybody. He probably will be protected by a Nazi gang. He might be killed in there. He might not. He might have some protection. He might not. I'm not exactly sure. But I do kind of want to go back to your point and think about ways that we could really change the system. And I do think introducing CRT to a police academy and cutting the police academy classes down a bit could do that. I think that forcing them to read like the new Jim Crow before they have to put on the badge, right? Like before they can pass academy. I think that those are some steps that I would like to see. And I know that those aren't like the most revolutionary, but like reform in I believe what Angela Davis said. It's like uh, abolition democracy is really reform with the mind of abolishing things later. Like we can't get rid of prisons tomorrow. We can't do it in 10 years, but maybe we can do it in 25. Maybe we can do it in our lifetime, but there has to be steps. And I think that I'm trying to look at active steps that we can do today, tomorrow, in the next year that can like help us kind of like see freedom, really see liberation. For me to feel like I can see a police going down the street and like this nigga not gonna shoot me. And it's like logically, I know that it won't happen right now for no reason, but it feels like it can. And I think that that's really a big problem to me. What
Right.
about you? What were your thoughts when you heard of the sentencing?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what you're saying. Like, there's no verdict that's ever going to be enough. He could have gotten life, but like we have no idea how comfy or how horrible it is. His death doesn't bring back George Floyd's. His
Mhm.
death didn't stop a black man who was trying to break up a fight from getting paralyzed, and it doesn't make me and you feel any better or safer about going out our doors or our children or our partners or anything like that. So I think that's the first thing. But on the other hand too, right, it goes back to what you were saying, where it's just like a lot of times we say that saying that we are our ancestors' wildest dreams and imaginations. And even though we still don't feel full freedom, I had a thought like, oh my gosh, we're our oppressor's worst nightmare,
Oh,
right?
that's a bar.
Right? We're not only our ancestors' wildest dreams, we are oppressors' worst nightmares. I think about whoever probably raped my ancestors or own my ancestors, and like I think about myself today and how semi freely I walk compared to what people
Mhm.
who look like me back then could do, and I find joy in that particular piece, and that gives me just enough fuel to wake up every morning and continue to fight for more. But at the same time, I don't think that any black person was put on this earth to be satisfied with our current state. And so I think that black people are so dynamic because we keep this balance of being able to find life and liberation and celebration somewhere, but never being satisfied because we know the potential of what America and the world could be. And so I think it's like anything else. You don't get, like they say in sports, don't get too high on yourself, don't get too low. Always keep that perfect balance, because
Mhm.
life can shift and have you turn in each and every way. But that was the original code book for black people. We got to find a way to have hope, but
Uh,
not get too caught up and comfortable with it. And so that's basically how I was feeling. And to be honest, I think that we sort of got hit with something like that this week, right? So for those of you who don't know, Bill Cosby, known for drugging and raping dozens, many a woman over his maybe nearly 40 to 50-year career.
Yeah.
He was put in jail, but recently he was released. We can give you more details, but it was more so on a technicality. I believe that he had made a deal with the prosecutor. If he gave up certain information, he wouldn't be put in jail. And because he gave certain information, he could be re-prosecuted. And now he's out after serving a 2-year sentence from not serving 2 years out of a 3 to 10-year sentence, I believe it was. And everyone's in an uproar about it. And it was interesting because I read some people saying, hey, look, we can all be upset about Bill Cosby, but it says a lot about the criminal justice system in and of itself that, like, because you might have some black men who didn't do rape. Maybe it was a drug charge or something like that. And they ended up getting put behind bars when they weren't supposed to be, right? And so there has to be an appreciation for the fact that the criminal justice system caught its mistake, while also grieving the fact that someone that we know for a fact is a known mature seasoned predator is now back out, and his survivors know that he's back out, right? And so it's a bittersweet thing for black people, because we don't even get to just look at, oh, the rapist is out. We got to think about, oh, but I know I got a homie, I got a family member who's behind bars, and they shouldn't have been put behind bars. We have to think about Bill Cosby and think about the Central Park Five at the same time. And it's wild because Bill Cosby is so guilty, and yet we still have to juxtapose that to black people who are in prison, who shouldn't be in the first place, and be thankful that like this particular person, like the criminal justice system saved this particular person, and it's just a lot. So I guess that's what I'm thinking about right now. Like, we just never get that break, which is why we have to stay really balanced. But T, what do you think?
Yeah, bro. I think I'm just frustrated more than anything.
Right.
I think it's tough because it's like people that I was cool with growing up, like really maybe even looked up to at a time when I'm like a sophomore and they're seniors, right? I saw them sharing things like, oh, y'all silly for believing everything the media said. Oh, if R. Kelly had a concert, I bet y'all be there, this, that, and the third. And it becomes frustrating because I know in my life, there are plenty of women around me that have been sexually assaulted, and that they've privileged me to that information. But I think about when people are sharing these things and liking these things and retweeting these things and posting these things on their story, it forces them into a smaller and smaller space, and it shows them truly who they can trust with that information, because it's so private, it's so vulnerable, it's so raw, right? And it's like, and these are the same reasons that people don't tell people, because it's like, will you be believed? And I just think that is frustrating, especially as black men, because we think that, and we've talked about it time and time again, it's like there's a tension between understanding that rape has been a way for extrajudicial killings of black men in the past. But that does not mean that every black man charged for rape is Emmett Till. And I think that that is really one of the most frustrating parts. I promise you, deep in my soul, if you really look into it, Bill Cosby was not about to buy NBC. Anybody that believes that conspiracy and you think Bill Cosby is innocent and he's just being framed by the Illuminati or the powers that be or the media, whoever you believe that it is Hollywood, I promise you it's not real. I need you to be able to look at real sources. I think that when people say fake news, this is what we're talking about. I know there's been like Facebook stories that have been shared over like 2,000 times of like this story about Bill Cosby getting set up, and there's people that I know personally that believe that, and it's like you're not doing your due diligence to really look into it. But these are also people that haven't been around spaces where people are talking about this stuff. So I can understand, and don't get me wrong, like it sounds bad, but I can at least understand why somebody with a lack of information may believe that. But it's like it's pushing them and it's not excusing them to that, and it's pushing them to really seek out more information about sexual assault and rape in general. And it's knowing that Bill Cosby literally got off for admitting to raping women. And it's like because he admitted it in a deposition and a district attorney before the one that actually charged him decided not to charge him, that's the loophole where he gets out. And it just becomes a sick thing um where he can get off. And I think that it just goes to show like how hard it is, especially if you have money and power and privilege to like beat these charges. And I also want to like kind of aim this message to black men specifically, because I've seen a lot of black men like, okay, like yeah, Bill Cosby might have did it, but like why don't y'all got the same smoke for Woody Allen? Or I think James Franco just actually got some charges for sexually assaulting some young kids. They're like, why don't we talk about those things? And it's like, we do. Like sometimes they're not held accountable, but like I don't think it's our duty to hold white people accountable. I think it's our duty to hold our community accountable. That's the power that I have. These are the people that I'm around. And I think that in doing so, rhetoric like that tells me that you don't check your homies that are on weirdo shit, that are on creepy shit, that like will offer to smoke a girl out just to kind of like try to get on them, right? Like that is very Bill Cosby-esque, right? Like date rape drugs. That's what we're talking about. And I think a lot of people think that like, oh, because a woman has been invited to your bedroom because she decided to come over a little later than like I guess respectable hours, that they're willing to do anything you want them to do. Rape is, again, we talked about this a few weeks ago, it's like it's non-active consent, right? Like that we want to avoid the gray area. So if you're not getting enthusiastic consent, you should not be in that position. And if you're not getting any consent at all, then you shouldn't be in that position. You should stop, right? So I think that like it's frustrating because there's so many rapey people around us in different ways, and it's a lot of the times it's in that gray area, right? It's getting women way drunker than they should be. It's like it's just being very predatory. And I think that like this has shown me how far we kind of need to go when it comes to issues like this. And it really is the reason I was in this chat room today, where like this clubhouse room, and they were talking about they don't believe in Black Lives Matter anymore because they don't feel like black women are really like supported in that movement. and and it is because it's like black men, like black women come to bat for black men when it comes to like police brutality and different things like that. But when it comes to sexual violence, that they're not showing that same love. And I understand that sentiment completely.
All right. No, absolutely. And I think that, to your point, man, look, I want to talk to the people who think that all this stuff is a conspiracy. Look, man, I never heard of John Legend being accused, Trevor Noah being accused. Mm-hmm. There's so many black celebrity men who have not been accused. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that people haven't done anything, because who knows what the stories are, but like there are a lot of powerful black men. And if Hollywood could, if the white supremacist structures that be could, like they would tear them down. Like doing the research that I do on black men and like how criminality is attached to us, I don't think people understand just how normal this is. Like, we're talking about, 4th of July is going to be coming up in a few days. People are going to be on lakes watching fireworks. People don't even understand that so many of our most famous lakes, like Lake Lanier and so on and so forth, are actually above black towns that were drowned. And you know why they were drowned? And you know why a lot of these black towns were not only massacred and destroyed, but then also drowned? It was because of a false rape allegation against a black man. And this is decades and decades and decades ago. And so it was such a normal thing. And so if the white supremacist structures that be really thought that, every powerful black man was a rapist, and every powerful black man, would be behind bars. It's really that simple. But there are plenty of black men who are not raping. There are plenty of black men who are minding their business. And so when a black man does get accused, let's just stop and look at the data. Let's and I think my thing too is this. I think there's a way to look at a situation without placing this harsh judgment on the survivor, right?
Mhm.
If you don't believe, if you might not believe someone, you might think that there are doubts in their stories. But when you go online and you just see all the names that people get called, all the ways that people in which people are harassed, versus letting the situation and the investigations and things of that nature play out, it's quite sickening. And I have some stats here. Shout out to Candace Bimbo, but she posted something on her Instagram, and it says this: according to the National Center Violence Against Women in the Black Community, for every Black woman who reports rape, at least 15 Black women don't report.
Mhm.
1 in 4 Black girls will be sexually abused before the age of 18. 1 in 5 Black women are survivors of rape. 35% of Black women experience some form of sexual violence in their lifetime. 40 to 60% of Black women report being subjected to coercive sexual contact by the age of 18. 17% of Black women experience sexual violence other than rape by an intimate partner in their lifetime. And it continues to go on. But I want you to understand that one of the reasons I focus more so on, Bill Cosby's and some of the Black men who are accused of sexual violence is because I'm looking at who they're hurting. And for me,
Mhm.
Black women have a special place in my heart because Black women ride for me and my brothers more than any other race or demographic or group of people. And so for me, I feel like it's my obligation as a Black man to say, hey, look, when you say something, I'm going to listen. I'm
Mhm.
not going to discount you, and I'm going to make you feel affirmed. If something comes out later and it's not, and it turns out that there was a lie, there was discrepancies, that's going to be on you to deal with. But me
Yeah.
as a Black man, how dare I say, no, that didn't happen. Oh, you this, oh, you that, start name calling you, start harassing you, start making you feel this, that, and the third. It's like, no, Black women have so many stories that they keep inside in order to protect not only the Black community, but Black men in general.
Yeah.
It's actually something called cultural betrayal trauma theory. And we're not even going to get into all that, but a brief summary of it is when black women are experience harm by Black men, it's even more hurtful because they're looking at it like, dang, we're both Black, you know what it feels like to be oppressed, and then you're going to take part in not only oppressing me by the rape or the sexual violence, but by not affirming me, by really discounting my experiences. And
Mhm.
so, and the horrible part about it, T, is that it'd be one thing if it was like it was only Black men doing this, but you see Felicia Rashad,
Yeah.
right, and I want you to sort of tell people about what happened there. But and even in her own way, she discounted the experiences of Black women. Even though she is a Black woman, I wouldn't be surprised if she fell on one of those statistics.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying she has. I don't know her, but like I wouldn't be surprised. So T, briefly just tell us what Felicia Rashad did and why it's harmful to Black women that she did that, and to honestly to Black men who've experienced sexual violence as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Felicia Rashad put out a tweet that said, finally, a terrible wrong is being righted, a miscarriage of justice is corrected, and posted a picture of Bill Cosby. And I think that that is specifically and particularly harmful because she is the dean of students of the or is it the fine arts department
Barnett's Department of Howard, yeah.
at Howard? Yeah, and Howard has had history of silencing Black women that have experienced rape on their campus, as I'm sure many campuses have. But Howard in specific has had there was a BuzzFeed article put out in 2017 about how Howard refused to help a suicidal rape victim, and it was a complete lawsuit. So I think that like it's extremely dangerous because we understand that um, how sexual violence on college campuses is so prevalent, and if you were a student at Howard, how comfortable would you feel if your dean said something like that? As a Black man, how comfortable would you be if your dean said, "Oh, if Derek Chauvin got off and they sent out a tweet and said, oh, a miscarriage of justice. He should have never been found guilty," right? you would be up in arms. You would feel attacked. You would feel vulnerable. You would feel as if that dean does not support you and that your life didn't matter when you were on that campus. So I just want everyone to really think about that. And Scholar P was talking specifically about Black women, but I think it goes without saying is that this is included to women of all races that are victimized by men in sexual violence, right? But I think it's also knowing that as Black men, we can talk the same language and speak the same language as Black men do, right? And that crime, inner community crime, is most prevalent, right? Like if you're Black, your victim is more likely to be Black. If you're white, your victim is more likely to be white. So it's knowing that if we can talk to like the men that look like us, then we can really help our community through this. But yeah, bro, like I think that, yeah, that's what makes it frustrating is that like somebody in power. And I think that that's what we think about when we're thinking about a systemic oppression, right? Is that when people are put in positions of these power in power, um, that their views and their thoughts and their feelings on these things affect a larger group of people.
Right, right, absolutely, yeah, and I guess the last thing I'll say about that, I think that with Felicia Rashad, it hurt because it's so wild because I think that before all these allegations around Bill Cosby came out and all these facts came out about Bill Cosby, like we were just at a place where he was such an inspiration to so many Black men and Black fathers and things like that. And Rashad, as his counterpart, was that for Black women. And so just really think about your words. If you are a successful Black man or woman, like think about the influence that your words had, because I don't believe in my heart of hearts that she wants to discourage or discount victims of sexual violence, but that's ultimately what she did, and that's ultimately her impact. And so I'll leave it by saying like, hey, like this is not how we get down. Quit discounting experiences. Let investigations and facts come to light. But like there are ways to look at a situation neutrally without putting in your harmful 2 cents towards someone, because it has ripple effects.
Absolutely. And one more thing, like I think it's important when possible Black men, we have to speak up and we have to stand up. I think like in so many instances we see like somebody killing police brutality, we're the first ones to say something. When it is affecting Black men specifically, we always have something to say, but I didn't see too many people engaging with like content about Bill Cosby that were men, specifically Black men. There was a select group, but it wasn't a wide array, right? And I think that that's what we think of when women say that they don't feel protected, right? Is that you have a voice and you have to use it, especially when it's not only privileging you.
All right, absolutely, absolutely. And so as we talk about people who have destroyed women's lives, we also have to on a more lighter side talk about men who are sustaining women's lives,
Or
or more
lack
so,
thereof.
right, or yeah, or lack thereof. So there was a situation that was on Reddit. It's been sort of going viral. Tell the people about it.
Yeah, of course, of course. So y'all might have seen it. It is a very popular Reddit thread called "Am I the Asshole?" And it really goes on to say that that this man is approaching 30 and that his girlfriend's approaching 30 and that he makes about $150,000 a year, and his wife or his girlfriend of 2 years makes about 45,000. He's an IT consultant and she's a teacher. Remember when a few weeks ago when we're talking about devaluing labor that seems very essential, but it often is put on domestic? I think that this is one of those examples. Um, so he goes on to say that he's from a very affluent family, that his mom and dad are doing well, that his brother is doing well, and that his brother's wife is doing well, and that they go on these lavish trips and these lavish vacations and these lavish like places to eat, and that there was a trip coming up and his girlfriend knew and she decided to take a second job waitressing on the weekends as knowing that she's a teacher still, right? And that they've been together these 2 years and they've split everything 50-50. That's just how they've always done it. And that they on this trip was going to do wine tasting and scuba diving and these wonderful things. And he was one of the ones that set the itinerary. And he was saying that like when they were on these trips that his girlfriend wasn't eating that much, and he was concerned. He asked her, what did she have a eating disorder, because she was only eating two meals a day, and he could hear her stomach rumbling. And she wasn't coming on all of the vacation like excursions and things, and he wanted to know what was up. Like, are you not rocking with us? And she goes on to say that like she just don't have enough money. And he's like, oh well, you knew you were coming and I gave you the itinerary, so why didn't you have enough money? Or why, like, what's the problem here? You should have known what you were getting yourself into. You shouldn't have came. Um, and quite frankly, I think he's a sicko. And I don't even know if this situation is real because it sounds so absurd, but it definitely can be. And I think that like it really begs the question, for me, like, how are you supposed to split things as a in a relationship? Does it matter the difference that people make? And like, I guess, how do you approach that? I know a running like topic on social media is like, how do you split the bills? Like, it's the man paying for everything, and it's a constant argument. But I do think that we should put some real critical thought and some empathy in when we are thinking about how like bills should be split, because I feel like this conversation is never really productive. But I do feel like that this happens, it has to be very situational. I don't think that there's any blanket rule.
Right, right. No, absolutely. And I think in that situation, first of all, if you're my baby and I make so much more than you, and like, it's not like the woman was just like, oh, you're gonna pay for everything and da 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 da. It's like, no, like I did what I could that my budget allowed. And so for me, it's just like from a starting standpoint, right? I would have at least chipped in where I knew she couldn't. I would have been like you.
Absolutely.
It would have been like the baton, right? So like you got yourself this far, I'll get us the rest of the way there, right? And I think that would have been a great starting point, especially him knowing that, hey, look, I'm choosing to date this woman, and we might be in different social classes. I'm choosing to take her on vacation with my family, who's also in a different social class than she is, and she's going to be around us, and she already has to probably deal with the anxiety of like, oh, I had the least money here. Right. And
Mhm.
so like I think from an emotional intelligence standpoint, he should have had that in mind. And like I said before, there are such a thing as gold diggers, people who don't want to put in any type of effort, who are just there to shop and sleep with you. And that's completely different from someone who's putting in housework and organizing things, which is then different from what this woman is doing, which is putting in her actual hard-earned money. And so I think that it could have really been a baton situation. Um, or he could have paid for everything else, and like they could have even made it romantic. Like, hey, I
Mhm.
put this much down. Like, we're gonna make a special favor book. Like tonight you'll cook me a meal. Tonight you'll give me a massage in exchange for me paying for the trip. There's so many different ways to handle this where your partner doesn't feel so embarrassed, so anxious, so
Yeah,
humiliated, and that you don't make her feel bad for having less money than you, because this sort of seems like elitism and financial abuse in a way.
absolutely.
And so I wasn't really for it.
Yeah, and it's a complete lack of emotional intelligence, just like you said. Like, how can you sit in good faith knowing that your partner has a 9 to 5, and that the value of teachers are just so undermined, and that she should be making more money, but they simply do not pay teachers what they should, and allow her to get a second job just to prepare for a trip that she still won't be able to eat enough for. And then you sit there and ask her, do you have a eating disorder? Like, how unaware can you truly be? But also, say he's in IT, so I'm like, you might be like one of those weirdos. But that's neither here nor there. I think it is just like you said, like a lack of true emotional intelligence, but also like just elitism and classism in a way. Like, it is like the myth of meritocracy. He really thinks that he's a better person, that his family are better people simply because they make more money. And it's not that he works any harder, because he can't. She works 2 jobs. Like, she really started waitressing just to come to this trip. That is love. And I truly hope that this isn't a real story, because I would hate for somebody to really put themselves in this position, because that person does not love you if they allow you to do things like that.
Right.
So I do think, like, especially just putting into terms, like, because that's what equity is, like knowing that you make 3 times as much as your partner, and also that that you're from an affluent family. Because I think that even if it was reversed and he was still from an affluent family, he might still have more needs taken care of than her if she's still making $150,000, but is the first one to really make it or one of the only ones to make it. Because you think about like where that money is going. You might be helping family out. You might be you might have to pay for literally everything, right? Like maybe you had to buy your own car, you had to get your own insurance, you had to get your own phone bill, you had to take care of all these different things, knowing that this person came up from an affluent family and it's like, oh, your parents bought you a car. So that's paid for. They paid the insurance, you don't have a phone bill. So you really just need to cover your living expenses. So I think again, everything is case by case. You have to really be able to look at your partner and figure out how like best you can support each other. I think money is one of the reasons that couples don't like work out, but I think it's truly because people don't talk about it. And I do think that gender roles do play a part. I think a lot of men with money feel like, oh, women just want to use me for my money. And I do think that sometimes the gender roles can be like unfortunate. I think that in a way they're like chivalry is a thing and like women expect to like when they go on dates for them to be paid for and different things like that, and I'm with that as well, but it's like also knowing that like things should balance out at some point. I don't truly believe in gender roles. Yeah, I don't think that women should be put in a box, but in the same time I don't think a man should have to pay for every date too. But that's my personal opinion. I don't think everybody has that same thing. I think some men enjoy that. And I think it's just deciding what really works for you and your partner. But
Right.
this man was completely off his fucking rocker, bro. Completely.
Yeah, and you know, there was another viral story about a woman who said her loft, that her boyfriend should continue paying the loft that they used to live in together. They're broken up now, but now that he's her ex, he should continue to pay for that. And a lot, but and she was like, you introduced me to a certain lifestyle, and now that I've been introduced to it, I don't think I should have to downgrade, even though I'm not putting anything towards it financially, and we're not dating anymore. But when that clip was circulating, a lot of women, even on the show that she was on attacked her and said like, that's nonsense, right? And so
Right.
even though you do have those gold diggers out there, you have the women who are like, you're going to pay for everything even if we're not dating anymore, and it's your responsibility in X, Y, and Z. I don't think that's the critical mass of women, and I think that the critical mass of women actually look at that and are just like, ew, that's gross, that's
Mhm.
nasty. And even in that particular situation, even if there are women out there who are like that, if you're a man with money, you still have the power in that situation as
Mhm.
well, because you have the power to give and to take. And so I think that it's important, especially for men to realize that like, hey, like, no one's ever asking you to stay with a gold digger. You never have to stay with a gold digger. You can literally get a million more people to take care of, right? But not every but when you have the money, you do have, there is a power dynamic. And I think that you have to, I think the emotional intelligence comes from really recognizing that, and realizing that if it's a trust issue for you, you got to realize that not all women are out for your money. And if a woman is out for your money, I don't care how bad she is, how great the sex is, whatever, you have the capacity to leave her, and you probably should. And so if you have that money, like, really sort of think differently about its power and how you're gonna utilize it. And that's all I got to say about that one, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. So, with that being said, man, we gotta go into a section of our show called the spotlight. All right, and so we always like to end things on a great note. We start off with the light roast, which is criticizing people, but when we do the spotlight, we give credit to someone or something in the community that's really impacting the world in a powerful way. And so I'm gonna say these three quickly, and we'll give some quick takes on them before we head out, y'all. So first of all, we got to give it up to General Milley, and his thoughts on critical race theory. If y'all haven't looked that up, please go YouTube it, go Google it. This is an Army general, and he really was breaking down critical race theory and why it's so important to understand white rage. And so this idea of white people being mad and storming the Capitol building on January 6th, he looked at critical race theory and said, I want to understand that, because If I'm an American, I need to understand the way that America is structured and why certain American citizens feel anger, feel rage. And if critical race theory gets me closer to that, then it's going to make me more informed, which is going to make me a better leader for our country and in my community. We got to give that this older white man credit for that because he's ahead of the curve. Um, you know, versus a lot of other older white men. So shout out to General Milley. Um, we also want to give a shout out to the black TikTokers who went on strike because these white TikTokers are stealing black TikTok dances and they are getting the label deals and not us. And so the black TikTokers are on strike. I'm sure you can Google and see how white TikTok dancers are really effing it up. And not in a good way. They are really bombing, egg on your face. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. It is not great for them right now. But shout out to black TikTokers because our content and our culture doesn't always have to be free. And if you're not going to pay the creatives and you're gonna pay our thieves. We did that. We've done that. We've
Absolutely.
experienced that already. We not for it anymore. So black TikTokers, y'all dance. Don't record it. Don't record anything. Don't record any fun sayings or anything. I'm almost ready for Black Twitter to say we're not even gonna give y'all no more
Boycott.
catchphrases.
Man,
Honestly,
man,
honestly,
the world would just it would just implode.
implode. But then finally, we got to shout out our man Kevin Gates, and we've talked a lot on the show about abuse and sexual trauma and things of that nature, and how we have to watch our words because Kevin Gates, he is a intellectual rapper of sorts. He always seems sort of composed. He has two phones, and
Oh,
uh,
uh,
phones. So, but he comes off as this sort of hard, more gangster, more composed rapper. But he admitted on an interview that he had been molested. He was a
mhm.
survivor of molestation. And so for a black man to be that vulnerable and in a hardcore sport like hip hop, like it's a beautiful thing for him to be that vulnerable and to hopefully empower other black men and other men in general to seek the help that they need and disclose to people that they can trust. And so we got to give a shout out to Milley, to Kevin, to those black TikTokers because all of them are either talking about freedom, finding freedom, or expressing their truth. And for that, like I can't say enough or give them enough flowers for it. But T, what do you think?
Man, I think you said it all right. Like, shout out to General Milley. I think knowing that he's a general high up in the armed forces, and he said a quote, pretty much saying that like he knows that like our Marines, our Air Force, our Army men, our Navy men, and women, right, that they're coming from the American people. So knowing how critical race theory, um, and really learning how racism affects the American people, like that's important. And that these cadets and these people at their academies need to learn this stuff if they're going to be true members of this society and really like protect and serve as they should. And I think if police officers and sheriffs and captains had the same perspective, then we would be moving a little further. Instead of looking at it as an attack, looking at it as if you're truly protecting and serving, you need to understand the people that you're protecting and serving and how this country has influenced you. Shout out to Kevin Gates. Like, I think it's important. Yeah, we talked about sexual abuse and sexual trauma. I think black men are also victims of this and knowing that. And I think that so often our masculinity is tied to like not being able to admit these things, right? Because that makes you vulnerable. And I think him being able to admit that is so important for other black men that have experienced these things that need someone to talk to about this and just as representation to know that this is okay. And I think knowing that like how this again that we're talking about black women being affected by this, just understanding that black men are affected by this too. I think that that's important. And then yeah, shout out to black TikTokers. It's important for us to protect our intellectual property. To see Charlie D'Amelio and all of them not really had no content because black people not putting out no content because all they doing is just really watering it down and whitewashing it because black people really putting too much sauce, too much seasoning on it. They really just they get real stiff with it and they do little things that they know white moms can do. That's what sells. So if they don't have no content, like yeah, like prove to me that you can do this without us, and I don't think they can. So yeah, just shout out to all of them. It's a spotlight, man. It's a spotlight.
Absolutely, man. Look, today has been a good day. We've really gotten into the weeds with it. This was a more serious, more intense episode, but we appreciate y'all rocking with us and having these deeper conversations. Because like I said, maybe something today that we said made you feel just a little bit uneasy, maybe made you feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I'm telling you right now, we have to start somewhere. T said it so elegantly earlier. He was talking about Angela Davis and how like we have to start like it all steps have to be moving forward, even if it's small steps, even if it's miniature steps, right? Even if it's microscopic steps, they have to be moving forward. And conversations like these and the uneasiness that you feel is going to make you move forward and not back. I promise you. I promise you, your future self will look back on yourself and be like, on your old self and be like, dang, I'm so glad I was uncomfortable back then so I
Yeah.
can be great and excellent now. And that's all we want for our nation and for our people. You know what I mean?
Facts, bro. Facts. Yeah. Thank y'all for just rocking with us this episode. I know it's heavy, but it was a heavy week. And I think that we got into the weeds of a lot of good conversations and really being able to understand this. If y'all ever have any questions, y'all know where to hit us. Brewin Black. We're on Instagram. We on Twitter. We are on YouTube now. We're gonna see some more clips soon. We're trying to put out and push out more content for y'all. So I appreciate y'all always rocking with us and always supporting, especially the people that supported us from the start, from the radio show, from
Right.
UCLA to down Sepulveda. Now we on Zoom. So watch out. We're gonna have a studio soon.
Hey,
Yes,
hey.
big moves to come. Big moves to come. And we love y'all and we appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yo, T, take us out.
All right. You know how we say, keep the coffee black.
Black.
And we like our podcast like we like our women. Black.
Black.
All right, y'all. Thank y'all for rocking with us, and we will see y'all soon. Peace.
Peace.